Hello, everyone. It's great to see everybody, and I'm really excited to be here with you and to hear all these great stories about people working in healthcare and changing the world that way. I have a similar story to share. My name is Sean O'Connor. I'm a partner at Smart Design, and for the last 7 years, I've had the pleasure of leading a very talented team out of our London-based studio, where we've done quite a bit of work in that sector. But what I'm going to talk to you today about is something we're calling the last mile, an issue that we've identified when looking at designing solutions for people that are in underserved situations. So today in the world, 1.5 billion people don't have access to any kind of identification. So this is identification for banking, it's for healthcare, it's for all kinds of systems. So if you're seeking healthcare and they don't know what day you were born, or they don't know your name, or you have the same name of several people in the same village, it makes it nearly impossible to have an accurate record of what you've been immunized against, what allergies you might have, and it creates a lot of issues for individuals. So when you think about this, this is basically like 1 in 5 people. This is 20% of the world's population without this access. And it doesn't seem quite fair that's the situation, but life is not fair. Now at Smart Design, we make a point of spending at least 20% of our time on non-for-profit issues. We try to look for people who are in the most deserving situations and that are the most underserved. The good news about this identification gap is that biometrics can really help us with this. However, at the current time, the technology out there isn't really accurate enough, particularly if your skin is skin that is damaged due to weather conditions, due to how you work. It might be scarred, it might be burned. A lot of the technologies aren't quite mobile enough right now, so they have to be tethered to desktop computers. And they're certainly not affordable enough for places like Nepal or Bangladesh or India. So we actually partnered with a group called Symfon, which was founded by some really razor-sharp PhDs out of Cambridge University. And they essentially created this fantastic technology that enabled the scanners to be much more accurate and then also much more affordable. So the exciting news was they got a lot of accolades for that and they got funding. However, when we started working with them and they first were doing pilots, and not even pilots, I call them prototypes out in the field, they had this, what they described, tech in a box that wasn't really working for people. And so why wasn't it working? Well, it wasn't working because the healthcare workers didn't support their workflow, right? The recipients didn't understand it at all, so it took a lot of time to explain it. And then also the product wasn't tough enough for the slums of Bangladesh. So they asked us to help them because for many years we've been working at sort of the intersection of where humanity interfaces with some kind of technology. So I know in the Bay Area, you guys always think of technology as digital, but technology could be any kind of technology, right? And so we work across a very large spectrum of products and services that sort of have that intersection, particularly where it's physical and digital. And in this work that we've been doing, for the developing worlds, one of the things that we found is that there's a lot of examples of really good intentions that really fall short of their potential. So this is like a photograph in Guatemala of a bunch of hospital equipment that was sent down there but nobody could use because no one knew how to use it. Another really well-known example is Play Pump. So for those of you who don't know about it, it was a very inspired and well-funded idea to create a toy that children would play on that would basically pull water out of a well that would serve the local communities. However, the reality was it didn't work this way. They had a lot of examples of an individual person trying to make this thing work, which it wouldn't. And it could be because they were at school. It could be because they didn't understand how to use it. But at the end of the day, it made us ask the question, well, what is this sort of last mile in this marathon of delivering something like this? Why are we falling down? So when you think about it, in the for-profit model, a company makes a product. They sell it to a customer. A customer pays for it, and they also give feedback. And it creates sort of this natural loop that we all work within that enables us to sort of make better products. The gap within the nonprofit sector is that if you have a donor, they give money to a company or perhaps an organization that creates a product or a service that gets delivered to a customer or a patient, but there's no feedback loop. And this is what we're describing as the last mile. So we wanted to ask ourselves the question at Smart Design, how do we design for this last mile? And you know, I think we all talk about design process, and I'll talk a little bit about it now. But the first thing that really came to mind was, so one of my colleagues was on a stage in London talking about what we do at Smart Design, and an intern from this company, Symfon, came up and asked her if we could help. So we have a process at Smart where we evaluate all the different opportunities, and we're always looking for them. We're always looking for ways that we can help, because our designers really need this extra space to focus on things that aren't commercially driven. And I think that's important to all of us as designers. It gives you inspiration, it gives you texture, it gives you things that you can bring back into your corporate life, right? And use in really interesting ways. The other thing I'd say is that, you know, this is my team in London working with some of the people from Cambridge at Symfon. And we also put a lot of sweat, blood, and tears into this effort. So even though we get a percentage of time allocated to this at Smart Design, we work nights, we work weekends, we'll do whatever we can to make sure that this happens. And I think you guys all know that as well, because I'm sure you work in the same way. So the service design process that we took them through kind of looked like this. You know, very similar to the processes you go through. I won't belabor you with it, but you know, it was storyboarding and you know, looking for use cases and task flows and wireframing it. I think what was really interesting though is that working with scientists is so much better than working with marketing executives. Because scientists think more like designers. They are constantly solving problems. And so I think that collaboration that we felt with them enabled us to create an offering that was actually so well suited for people, because we weren't trying to think about how do we expand it at this point. We were just trying to think about what was best for the person or the people involved. The other thing that was nice is that a lot of times when you work with an NGO, you inherit some hardware. You'll get something that they say, well, we have to use this because it was donated to us. At this stage in the game, like, it was basically something that had been hatched together, and they had some industrial designers in the UK that they'd pulled in to actually create the form, but it wasn't finalized yet. So what we were able to do is consider the digital and the physical touch points completely holistically. We didn't have to separate them. We weren't bolting something on, and I know we all love to work this way, but I think it does make a really big difference. Another thing that we did in this program is we applied the principles of universal design. So SMART is actually pretty well known for our work with OXO Good Grips in establishing this principle very early on. But we can apply it to almost anything, you know, and we certainly did in this case when you think about what is sort of the tech adaptation of the people using the product or the service, what is their exposure to the healthcare system, particularly in these countries, what is their knowledge of experience design, and then also are there cultural norms that you have to consider. So thinking through things like, okay, a lot of healthcare workers are women in these countries because it's not suitable for a man to walk into a woman's home and touch her pregnant belly. That just doesn't happen in a lot of these places. So this is where we started. These are the components that we had. And then this is a photograph of where we landed, of the product in use. So what I'd like to do is share a video with you that just sort of shows you how it works.
Developing world, like the formal identification necessary to access essential services.
Sorry. Let's try that again. It's not my laptop. Okay.
More than 1.5 billion people in the developing world lack the formal identification necessary to access essential services such as basic healthcare, education, financing, and aid distribution. Symfon is a nonprofit startup set on changing this staggering statistic. They developed the simple but brilliant technology a portable biometric scanning device that empowers community workers to digitally link a person's fingerprints to their records, which can help the most disadvantaged people in the world's harshest settings to get the services they need. Designed specifically for the scarred fingerprints of the poorest populations, the hardware is 5 times cheaper and 228% more accurate than existing mobile scanners used in the same settings. But technology is only as powerful as the human experience that surrounds it. To create the ideal experience around an ID scanner and mobile app, Symprint's partnered with inclusive design experts at Smart Design, resulting in the first fingerprint identification system to be created specifically for and by frontline workers. The end product forges over 300 hours of user-centered design and co-creation into a seamless biometric workflow. Every feature has been designed with users to meet their needs. Testing across 3 continents and 6 countries has shown that frontline workers can learn how to use Symprint with less than 30 minutes of training. To design a better experience, Smart identified a variety of hero moments in users' journeys and created storyboards to illustrate the needs of both the people and the community workers, from the time a record is created for a person through to the successful subsequent identification of that person. It's all achieved in 4 easy steps. A simple user interface guides data collection, a process that can be seamlessly integrated into any existing workflow and application, such as those of Symprint's NGO partners. The frontline worker places a beneficiary's finger on the scanner, which is rugged, waterproof, and mobile, built for the toughest conditions on the front lines. The system runs a matching algorithm either offline or online. This offers rapid matching that reduces errors and improves accuracy, compliance, and quality. The system returns a unique ID that links to digital records and next steps in services. The fingerprint serves as a globally unique and secure ID that cannot be forgotten or lost. Symprint and Smart Design remain focused on delivering impact at the last mile, the front line. By maintaining a running dialogue with local communities and user champions, the experience is continually optimized via ongoing feedback loops and co-creation efforts. These local ambassadors also receive design research training, guaranteeing that the solution can continue to scale as Symprint invests in new regions. Pilots of the award-winning initiative are underway, having reached over 50,000 people in 2016, with plans to affect more than 4.8 million people over the next 3 years. Armed with new methodologies and tools, Symprint is now empowered to solve numerous global social challenges through the power of design. This will not only save lives, but is helping researchers, NGOs, and governments in the fight against poverty.
So, at the end result of this, we enabled them to deliver a next-generation scanner that was highly portable, durable. We designed a service experience that was both intuitive and efficient for the healthcare workers as well as the recipients. And then this was all informed through a mobile app that we continually update based on feedback out in the field. So one thing that's been nice is we've gotten a lot of recognition for this work so far. We've worked in partnership, and that wasn't our ultimate goal, but I think the thing that we're more excited about is some of the stats in terms of how many people this is going to impact. So Symprint's received several million in funding this year to roll this out across 4 million recipients over the next 3 years across these different NGOs globally. So it's really taken off. We're pretty excited about it. And just the possibility of what it can do. And Symprint is not going to stop with just health records. They're going to move into other areas as well to see how identification can help people. So one thought that we did have was how can we better serve some of these communities? So we start by thinking beyond the product design itself in terms of how can we enable ongoing service optimization, as well as how can we empower the ongoing adaptation. So one of the tenets was teach a man to fish, or in this case, better yet, a woman, because you need to make sure that you're working with them to solve the right problems if you get the opportunity to work with one of these NGOs. They often need to hone in on that. Another thing I think is, don't just think about doing great design, but do it within those constraints and realize those constraints and work towards those constraints. And whenever appropriate, assign out other tasks, because when you're working with an NGO, it's interesting when, Bev, when you were talking about the size of UX teams, I mean, our UX team on this was probably, I'd say like 3 people that would be qualified as a UX designer, and then the rest of them were either scientists or people working in the field. So another tenet is just to share your smart approach, your processes, your tools, give it away because it will pay out in the end. And Also, make sure that whenever you do a rollout like this, engage in that community, right? You know, we found UX champions within each of these local organizations that really supported what we were doing. They saw the benefit, and actually they gave us feedback that was invaluable in delivering on the solution. And this just allows you to scale. And then last but not least, you know, think about, when you think about funding and opportunities, you know, use your user experience skills to leverage new funding and new aid, because it will be more effective. It'll provide more benefit for the people that actually need it the most, and then it will minimize a lot of waste and increase impact. So that's what we mean by closing the loop on the last mile of design, and it's a model that empowers nonprofits so that they can have more impact and solve bigger problems. And I think I'm a little bit over on time, so I want to say thank you. Should I let you do that?